So we shall start the first roundtable. So I call to my side Professor Leo Antoniseli, Professor Hervé Delingette, Irene Schlunder, and hopefully, normally we should have online André Iris from the European Commission, but I don't see him on the screen.
Yeah, I am here. Good afternoon.
Oh, you are here. So we don't see you, but we hear you, but I guess we'll see you very soon. Okay, great. So short introduction. So we are going today to speak about AI and application to health and medicine. Now, we all agree that at the very core of AI, there is data. There is a need for data. So accessing, facilitating access, sharing data is clearly a major issue. We all hear every day about revolution that AI is bringing or will be bringing to health. I think that one of the main parts of this revolution is not about inventing new algorithms or methodologies. There is a part which is that, but the big part of this revolution is about organizing, facilitating access to unbiased, quality, interoperable health databases at cross-national level. It is something that is extremely difficult. This revolution has started. We are at the very, very beginning. There is a long way, I think. Well, we'll be discussing about that. And it's full of challenges and bottlenecks. So this roundtable will be about accessing and sharing data for secondary use. Actually, I don't like very much this term of secondary use because it feels like it's secondary, right? It's less important than primary use. So that is very important to say that it's not the case. They are both as important. To make it very simple, they both save lives. And one without the other doesn't make sense. And I guess that's one of the reasons why the European Health Data Space, we'll be talking about that, tackles both. But we'll be discussing that later. So when we're talking about data sharing and facilitating data access, of course, that involves a lot of very different expertise, a lot of very different actors of the ecosystem. So it is very important when you want to tackle the bottlenecks and challenges to be able to take into account all the different viewpoints of these different expertise. And that's why it was very important for me to have for this roundtable very different expertise, top expertise, but from very different domains in order to get access to all these viewpoints. So it's a great honor for me to welcome Leo Antoniseli. So Leo, you have many titles, so I selected a few of them, sorry. I hope I selected the right one. You are principal research scientist at MIT and a clinical research director at Laboratory of Computational Physiology. Among other things, you are known worldwide for leading the group that built and maintains the MIMIC database, Medical Information Mart for Intensive Care, which is one of the star database in the world of AI for health with more than 2,000 publications. You collaborated, of course, also on many, many papers about data access. Hervé Delingette, you are a senior researcher at Université Côte d'Azur and INRIA, and a shareholder at the AI Institute Nice Provence Côte d'Azur. You worked in several scientific projects with the UK Biobank for the analysis of medical imagery. You work with APHP, the group of Parisian hospitals, for the construction of a multicentric cohort. And more recently with the Nice Hospital for the construction of their data platform. Irene Schlunder, you're a lawyer and a senior legal expert at BBMRI. BBMRI is a European research infrastructure with a biobank. So you have many expertise, among them, of course, GDPR, but not only, research on legal expertise in H2020 projects, anonymization, pseudonymization, we will be talking about that, of course, and code of conduct for health research. And online, but I still don't see him. It would be great if we could have the image. But online, last but not least, we had the chance to have with us André Iris. So, André, you were at the European Commission no less. Oh, ça y est, we see you. Good. Hello. No less than, but the former director responsible for health systems, medical products, and innovation. And you just changed. And today you are the scientific advisor to the Director General of the Directorate General Health and Food Safety, DG Santé. So that's at the European Commission. So thank you very much to all of you for being here today with us. So I'll be moderating this roundtable, but actually I have another cap, so I'll use it sometimes. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer of the French national platform, the Health Data Hub, that facilitates access to data. So I will allow myself on rare occasion to change my cap and jump in the discussion with this other cap, if you don't mind. So after this introduction, I hope it was not too long. I think we're ready to start. And before opening the live discussions between all the guests, I would like to give each of the guests 4 minutes maximum, one after the other, to tell the audience about your experience about data access or data sharing. And I suggest that we start with Leo, please.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I represent the Laboratory for Computational Physiology at MIT, and we are the group behind the Medical Information Mart for Intensive Care. It's a publicly de-identified data that has been shared with the research community. It captures all the data that is obtained from all the patients admitted to all the intensive care units of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center where I work. And this data has been publicly available for more than a decade now with over 30,000 users from around the world. And it's not just a database. We have created this ecosystem around the database. And also, since the release of MIMIC, we have also spread out to other parts of the hospital. So we now have data coming from the emergency department. We have data consisting of echocardiograms, of actual medical images. But the most important contribution, I think, of what we have done is to create this repository. So we have code repositories that accompany the data sets that we have created and we are sharing. And this is an opportunity for the community to share the codes and queries that they have used, the curation that they have done. As most of you are aware of, curation is really the rate limiting step. The machine learning is easy once you understand the data, once you understand the question, but curation is something that a lot of people struggle with. And having a code repository lowers the barrier for clinical research. A lot of groups are able to run right away after getting access to MIMIC because they could reuse previous concepts, previous definitions, previous SQL queries that have identified patients who develop sepsis, who develop acute kidney injury. And there's also a mechanism for quality assurance. So we look at each other's codes, we correct them when we find some problems there. So we think that having this platform to be able to help each other, to be able for groups to build upon the research that they have published, to be able to replicate. Because as we know, reproducibility is a big problem, and we think it's going to be a bigger problem with AI because everyone's so interested in AI. People are all trying to come up with the next best algorithm. Reproducibility is going to be a bigger issue as compared to the previous century. And having a database that is shared with the research community, a repository that you can deposit all your codes and queries, I think would be a valuable contribution to the research community. And I'm going to pause there and pass it on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Leo. So, Hervé.
Hello. So, thank you, Emmanuel, for the introduction and organizing this meeting. So, indeed, so my expertise in the analysis of medical images, and as a scientist, computer scientist, we are not producing data, although we also made available synthetic images, echocardiographic images, that is being used for benchmarking motion tracking algorithms. So I think producing also synthetic and realistic images is also an important part of data sharing in healthcare. So otherwise, my experience has been more to access already existing data. So in the old days, you could visit your favorite radiologist and then share a floppy disk, a tape, or a bunch of CDs. And that was the old way to share data. But of course, nowadays, and especially with European GDPR and other regulations, we are mostly accessing data through remote data lakes that are sitting on hospitals. And so this is, for instance, the case with the data lake, the data warehouse of the Paris hospital, where we are collaborating for instance, accessing on the order of 200,000 ultrasound images of the abdomen to detect pathology, to detect anomalies. Also, we are working on the analysis of whole body TEP images for also detecting possible presence of lesions. And finally, we are working on the cohort of 7,000 MR images for prostate lesion detection. And I'd like to just to summarize from my experience has been that we should focus on both good data and big data. So good data, I think, is what I mean by good data is well-curated, well-annotated data sets. And these are very useful for knowledge discovery and also for the training of machine learning algorithms. But you also need a big data of various quality for the test part of your algorithm in order to test the limits of the acquired knowledge and test the performance of the algorithm in real-world situations. So again, the focus on big data, on good data, should maybe be the first priority, then followed by acquiring more massive data, more representative of real world. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Hervé. So now it's a turn to Irene. Tell us more about BBMRI, maybe.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. Yeah, as you have said, BBMRI is a European infrastructure for biobanks. So we facilitate faster data sharing. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, it's always the lawyer to be blamed if data sharing is not successful in Europe. Due to what we all know, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. So it's one of the services and in BBMRI we offer is a so-called service for ethical and legal questions. So we issue, as you've mentioned, some guidelines, and we are working on a code of conduct under the GDPR to facilitate data sharing. So I'm working in that field now for over 10 years. And what I would like to emphasize is that data protection law is not always the most important barrier or obstacle. I can only heavily agree with my colleagues here on the table that curation of data quality is the first thing we have to keep an eye on. And first, let's define what data we would like to share and in what quality we would like to share them, and then see how it fits into the legal landscape and the GDPR. And I always try to get the message across. There are always solutions out there. We just have to do our homework. And I feel myself as a facilitator and not a roadblock. Yeah, a special concern, of course, is with data sharing between United States and Europe now, because you all know that the data shield and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. So people now in Europe are very reluctant to exchange data across the Atlantic. This is certainly a major issue that is not resolved at all. So one way would be to add additional security measures. We could talk about anonymization, and then we get into the next conversation. What does that mean? Because under United States jurisdiction, it means slightly different things than under GDPR. I think that there might be ways, and I've had a nice conversation during lunch. So there's a novel approach, not so innovative, but it's evolving now, that we leave the data where they are and we bring the algorithm to the data. That would resolve many GDPR issues. It's, in my personal view, and it's much more secure for individuals and patients, because there's no data journey. As soon as you have released data into a world you never are able to control fully, it's just better you keep the data where they are and you accept the algorithms, and you can control in a secure environment what is been done with the data, with the analysis. But that's one way. You just I warned Emmanuel that I could talk endlessly, so please interrupt me.
No, you can go one more minute if you want. If you have some.
I mean, there are so many legal issues. Anonymization, for example, I just to follow up a little bit on this. There are genome data, there are images, and that makes it quite different to really anonymize. So we have always, irrespective of the jurisdiction we are in, we have to take into account that individuals trust the research community. And what we do not need is scandals around, research and data sharing. So we have always to try to find a secure way for patients, for individuals, for donors, in order to protect their interests. And I think through such collaborations and such nice symposiums, we can discuss common ways how to find such ways. And I'm we're very happy to be here and to accept any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Irene. We will be discussing about all that, of course. But before that, I give the floor to André. Are you still with us?
Thank you, Emmanuel. It's a pleasure to be with you. Sorry, I was not able to finally join to Paris. It's TGV doesn't go so quick as I wanted to be in Brussels and Paris today in person. Maybe I will start from a little bit from Hervé's point. The data. I'm a radiologist by training. I spent my professional life beginning in the radiology field. This is my still feelings when we have seen revolution in the digitalization of imagination. When we started to turn from the kilometers of the films into the volumes of bigger tetragates and all these big data sources to packs. We were able to generate to the imagine technology. But speaking to Irene, thank you very much, because you said the lawyers can really solve all problems. I thank you very much. I am here today as a regulator, someone who is the co-author of the important regulation, which we already mentioned by Emmanuel, is now under negotiation in the European Council and European Parliament. But the Commission proposal is based on the three important pillars. The first pillar, which is basically about primary health data, increasing kind of access for the patients and then to the own data and regulating this field. But we are not discussing this field. Of course, is very well connected, because already mentioned quality of data are coming from the primary source, which is the primary health data. But we will most probably continue discussion around this. The second pillar is the one we discussed today. This is about the secondary use of data and all rules, procedures, how to access them. And the third important element is about the so-called single market, especially for American audience, means that the digital product services and can be better circulated across Europe, not just in one member state like France or Belgium where they are developed, but also across European Union. So this is quite complex regulation. As Emmanuel said, we are flying and building the plane, at the same time, because we decided to set up the number of regulations into this field, helping different not only governance of the system, including, for example, the way that the national hubs are working, the one which Manuel is representing from France, because we don't have many in Europe yet, but they will come in after I think during the next coming years. But also it's giving the system, how you access to the data holders and basically the what kind of system we can do, kind of submissions you can give to get the data. So just to conclude, we have developed already this infrastructure for primary health data, which already is joined by 11 member states. More will come in next 2-3 years to be connected. But for the secondary use data, we decided to set up the give money and allocate the resources to pilot project, which finally is run by French data hub, health data hub. And this project is having a number of member states, together 16 institutions, not only member states, but also big research networks and 2 important health agencies in the European Union, European Medicine Agency and ECDC. And just conclude, the idea is basically to open this European health data space to as many users as possible, starting from research community through the policymakers, health technology assessment agencies, European medicine agencies, but also help us with pandemic management. I think we learned during this current pandemic that we really have been slow, and was so difficult not to only manage pandemic, but also get the right decisions in the right moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrei. So just, Andrei, just to tell you, we don't see you on the screen when you don't speak. So whenever you want to jump in the conversation, please don't raise your hand, but just speak, okay? That's important. So just to follow up 1 minute, I'll change my cap for 1 minute just to talk about this pilot thing that the Health Data Hub is leading. So we are leading a consortium, very large consortium. We have with us 8 national platforms like the Hub. We have the EMA, the CDC, 2 European agencies. We have BBMRI, Elixir, so for genomic biobanks, and many more institutions. And the goal of this pilot is twofold: building pipelines between all these existing infrastructures, these platforms, so that we could have a central portal to query, to send some queries on metadata, on the data available on all the platforms. So that will be an open portal for everybody. And then another central portal that will enable researchers to fill up a unique form to access data in different countries. So that's one goal of the pilot. The second one is to run use cases, scientific use cases, just to prove that it is potentially extremely important and impactful to run research at a level of European data, at the level of Europe. So this is the twofold. It's a 2-year project. It started officially last week. So we have a lot of thing to do. Okay, so now let's go into the core of the discussion. And I would like to start, saying, and everybody has it in his mind, and some already mentioned it. Everybody, all the citizens, media are afraid of sharing the data because they are afraid of re-identification. They are afraid of data leaks. So the risk to share data is everywhere. We hear about it all the time. So I would like to discuss around that to understand exactly what are the risks and maybe what are the solutions. Irene was mentioning the federated learning approach where the data doesn't move. But I don't remember who mentioned also pseudonymization, k-anonymization. differential privacy, pseudonymization, maybe synthetical data, and so on. So this is a very, very important matter to address, risk of sharing. And maybe Leo, you can start, and I will ask you to just do 30 seconds to explain, according to HIPAA, what does it mean, de-identified data? And because MIMIC is de-identified, so what it means, and then I let you talk about what you think about the risk of sharing.
Yes, so luckily in the United States, we have very concrete steps on how to de-identify the data. And it entails removing 18 features, including the names and addresses and serial numbers of devices that are being implanted to patients. And if you are able to remove that, then it's considered de-identified. We do additional experiments to see how likely it is to be able to re-identify. So that's another step. But at least in the United States, removing the 18 features would allow you to say that the data has been de-identified. And that made it possible for us to release MIMIC as early as 2008. And we're grateful for HIPAA, which is not present in most of the world.
So Irene, maybe my question would be, so if in Europe we remove these 18 variables, what do we have?
In practical terms, I think the difference is not huge. Any, let's say, anonymization tool in Europe would also start from that, removing those 18 items. I mean, I can just tell you.
But then we cannot open it, as MIMIC is opened, right?
But the question then is, so the United States jurisdiction follows a very formal approach. As long as you follow the rules, you do some tests, because there's a 19th line telling you that you anyway have to prove that it's really de-identified. But you are more or less on the safe side. The GDPR takes a more risk-based approach. So the data controller always remains responsible for the result. So even if you take out those 18 items, you have to prove, in case you are challenged, that this is enough to protect the individuals behind the data set. And this heavily depends on the context knowledge of other people. So what we use normally, in addition, are some organizational and technical measures to even protect so-called anonymized data set, because the status of being protected in that way has an impact on the status of anonymity. So it makes a huge difference if or whether you release data very openly in the internet for download by whomever, then you have certainly to do much more than remove those 18 items. Or if you have it in a protected area where you have to apply as a trusted researcher with a protocol, a research protocol with a positive ethics vote, then the level of de-identification might be much weaker, so to say, and it always goes as anonymized data. But the other question I might just conclude is that we, in medical research, we do not like anonymization because it spoils the data. So we would rather go for, let's not de-identify too much, but let's leave as much as possible in, and then have a governance around and consent from the patient or the donor behind allowing us to share it within a trusted, let's say, research community environment. That would be my favorite.
Thank you. Hervé, I guess you have some comments. So.
Yes, so for the anonymizations, which is the fact that you cannot re-identify the health data, I think this is probably amenable only to specific type of health data, and images may be part of this data that you can anonymize. And there are some criteria that was established by a working group under the European Data Protection Board, which says that it's anonymized if you cannot single out or individualize one part of the data. If it's not linkable, you cannot link with other existing data, and if you can limit the inference, the knowledge about the patient behind the data. Yet these are guidelines, and what maybe we are missing is a practical process to actually prove the anonymization. And right now, I think this is what we are missing. We have the principles, but we are missing the practical process to perform that, such that it can be scalable to, let's say, the whole community. So I wanted to also mention other ways to protect the data. One way also is to create synthetic data out of real ones, and AI actually have generative models which are fairly performant for creating data that look like real ones, but in particular, but still capture the correlation, important correlation inside the data, while being different from the original ones. So this is another way. So I would cite a third way, which is federated learning, which was already mentioned.
But there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons. I mean, federated learning is like when you ask some people, say, this is the solution. Some people say, I've tried and it's catastrophic. I mean,
okay, this is a way to explore. It's not there is no silver bullet, I think, for any of those. But this, of course, if the cons are the fact that it's difficult to do the curation on a homogeneous way. And so also the second one would be the bias that can be specific to each center. And it's difficult to take that into account, although there are algorithmic ways to mitigate the bias in federated learning. Still an ongoing and rich topic in machine learning.
So, André, as you heard, we need guidelines. Yeah. Official guidelines. So is there anything like that in the project of the European Health Data Space?
Yeah, it's one of the area we of course have a lot of still discussion especially with the regulators. Emmanuel, if I can play it back to your also to the project you are responsible. One of the idea for this pilot is to really try the different systems and also learn from experience from those countries already exploring this sharing data or access data. But general approaches to really clarify this, through the tertiary legislation, what is the how we understand this concept of anonymization or pseudo anonymization or minimalization of data, because of course, as Irene said, the GDPR is giving us a lot of kind of already regulation, but when we develop this new regulation, we thought it would be important first to get into agreement across Europe how we understand this and put this in the regulatory framework, which help us, all to basically follow the same rule. So we will build on the experience, on the number of also the guidelines that are developed through different societies and ideas. But of course, we also would like to learn from the project you are managing. What is the practical concern and how to manage this world of data in different countries, in different health systems, in different hospitals or clinics, outpatient clinic settings. Or
thank you. Thank you, André. So one last thing, okay, we're all afraid of data leaks and so on, but it is very, I think, important to talk about what is the real risk. I mean, there were some data leaks. So what is the consequence of these data leaks? Is this big consequences, or what is the real consequence of these data leaks? So maybe first Leo and then Irene.
Yeah, so I wanted to clarify that there's a difference between re-identification and data breach. And somehow I think people are confusing the two. So we undertook some investigation and looked at how many people were actually re-identified from a publicly available health database in the last 5 years. And we worked with Media Cloud, and they helped us look at 10,000 news articles from around the world from the last 5 years. And we were not able to find a single person who was re-identified from a health database or whose health data was re-identified from a publicly available database. and we contrasted that to the real risk, which is data breach. And during the same time period, close to 100 million electronic health records were breached. So we're saying that the risk is not zero. Definitely there is a risk, but that risk compared to cybersecurity risk is minuscule, and it's probably offset by the harm of not sharing data, which I think is going to be the next question.
Yes, so we don't step on it, Irene.
Yeah, I would like to draw the attention to the fact that the risk is not the same for everybody. So there are people others are more interested in. So politicians, for example, and there's the senator, what's his name case, a very famous case where he was easily re-identified in a health database because he collapsed, before cameras and in a TV show or something. So it was very easy. So if you have such coincidences, that it might be easy for some people to be identified, and then harm can be huge. I mean, depending on what the health status is of some people. So I know from a German ministry, for example, that she has managed not to reveal to the public what she suffers as a chronic genetic disease up to now, but it depends. It depends on whom we are talking about. And just one thing to the guidelines of anonymization, sorry to say that, I do not believe that we will ever be able to find the Holy Grail. Anonymization is a moving target. So it depends on, as I said, context, knowledge, on the genealogic databases, for example, for genomic data, the development, or evolving databases everywhere. It depends on technical measures. So I think we have to work on it constantly.
Thank you very much. So Leo revealed the next question. So I'm very angry. No, okay. Everybody talks about the risk to share, but of course, there is the risk not to share, which is extremely important, and we hardly hear about it. And I guess the urge to share was revealed by the COVID pandemic very clearly. There were a few stories around that, and we all know that if we had pooled that access to some interoperable databases at the worldwide level, which is like, we are very far from that, but we would manage a pandemic in a very, very different way. So maybe, Hervé, you want to start on that question?
Yes, just to mention that I think open data in general has been a major way to accelerate the creation of knowledge and the innovation at the same time. And this has been especially, at least I could observe that in the community of computer vision, where there has been a very clearly virtuous triangle that has been created between open data, open software, which is easily reusable by others, and open publication. And so we have seen an incredible acceleration of research due to the combination of the three pillars, each one reinforcing the two others. So I think it would be very, would say, deceiving that healthcare, which is one of the pillars for the well-being of our society, would not benefit from this acceleration of innovation and knowledge. So I think that's why it's very important that we are able to have some open access with some, of course, restrictions to keep privacy, but to that healthcare be also the support for open data. And I'd like also to mention that there are also the communities, not only on well-developed countries, but also our colleagues that are on other countries are also mostly doing their research on open databases. And it's also a way to grow this community worldwide to provide this sharing of data. And there are all other aspects of related to bias, but I guess I will let my colleagues develop those.
Yeah, I think you have a lot to say about bias, please.
Yeah. two big harms from not sharing data. What we've discovered in the last 5 years, really, since the ProPublica report was published, talking about a judicial court algorithm that was biased against Blacks and Hispanic prisoners, is that bias lurks in electronic health record data in unimaginable ways. And I'm going to be talking more about this. It's not just lack of access to care. We have technology that is biased against some demographics. So for one group to be able to understand the bias in the data, it's not going to happen. The beauty of Mimic, for example, is we have 30,000 users. They're all helping each other. They're all trying to understand what are the forms of bias that are found in Mimic. Is it the frequency of monitoring? Is it the pulse oximetry, the thermometry? We have discovered in the last 5 years that those are all prejudice against certain demographics. The other big harm in not sharing data is that I think we limit the diversity of the research community. You nicely mentioned that open data sets would allow more women investigators. We have finished a study showing that there were more women publishing off Mimic and other open data sets as compared to data sets where the access is restricted. When you restrict the access to internal investigators, you preserve the pecking order. And typically there's one demographic that would predominate in terms of creating and validating the knowledge. And we know that that hasn't worked for us in the past. The reason why we're seeing suboptimal outcomes is that the medical research community is not represented well by people who are disproportionately burdened by disease. And we need to really recruit them because they have the perspective to understand health and disease better than the people who are in this room, for example.
So adding some more stuff about this sharing the data, risk of sharing of not sharing the data. There are some bottlenecks that we have to discuss, I think. I mean, this is something we experience in France, but I know that all the countries have the same ones. Valorization. For data producers, they have they need to have enough money. They need to have to operate scientific valorization in order to be able to build high standards quality data. There is also financial valorization, scientific valorization, and a totally different point of view, but you mentioned at the beginning, I think, Irene, also the consents of citizens. Citizens, they're all very afraid, a lot of them. And okay, you might not agree, but I think that education of the citizen, I mean, just explain to them what is health data, what can be done, what cannot be done, because it's just they're full of fantasies. It could be utopia or it could be dystopia, but I think that this education of the citizen is also a very big part. So valorization and citizen. I don't know who wants to start. Irene or Andre, maybe, as you want. Okay, maybe Irene. Okay. Sorry. No, go ahead, Andre, because we don't see you. So please.
I wanted to trigger maybe from this. How we should find the dialogue with citizens. I think we need to really understand the concept of solidarity of sharing data, because this is I think is principle of this concept, that I share my data because I belong to this is important for society, for my children, for myself. So the solidarity doesn't mean that I am giving everything. No, we share. So I think the sharing the data for me is a solidarity, and sharing data is important. The second, I think what is important is kind of develop the right motivations for those they are kind of helping with the creation of data. Why nurses? Why doctors should make sure the data quality is good? Only if they will get the feedback from their works. Okay, if I am working on I think ICU is most probably the best example. You would like to increase the patient safety. What is working, what is not working.
Oui, je vous appelais juste pour une petite question.
This will be my next example. And the last point, which I think is important, is I call this data culture. So basically, we can show to the citizens or to individual health professionals or patients that we are building our policy, our clinical decisions based on data. So explain case by case. For example, I'll use example of COVID. We could do better assessment of different treatments if data will be shared, globally in the very quick manner and so on. And we can present this, all these developments, many developments, well possible because of the access to data during the COVID time. Thank you.
Thank you, André. Irene?
Yeah, the whole thing is, I'm afraid, a little bit more complex. My first question would be, what data are we talking about? My second question would be, what do we mean by sharing? With whom? Under what conditions? And then my experiences and my belief is that people and normal citizens are not, they don't need to know any detail, but they need to understand with whom and for what purpose am I sharing my data, and what is a bit more sensitive to share? Is it genome, or is it images, or is it, I don't know what? And then people might be happy to share 99% of their even health data, but maybe there's one thing they would like to keep secret. So I think we have to go into the details. I'm very sorry about that. But
no, we won't have time. But
no, not here and now. But that would be my point, even to the European Commission. I think the EHDS is not concrete enough. We should focus first on, let's say, healthcare data, define some, let's say, data sets, some items, some things more, make it a little bit more structured than just talk about data. I mean, what data are we talking about? And then sharing, there's the aspect of transparency, for example. People would like to know to whom their data have been shared. So in Germany, for example, we have a huge program, Medical Informatics Initiative, and Data Protection Authority forced the researchers to have a transparency portal. And I think this is fine. NHS in UK has such a transparency portal. So you can go there and see with whom your data have been shared and for what purpose. And I think we should treat citizens, in a way, seriously.
Yeah, I guess we all agree on that. Okay, so thank you very much. So despite, I guess, all these bottlenecks and challenges and so on, I guess you all have in mind one success story about sharing the data or data access. So you have a little more than 1 minute each. No, let's say 2 minutes each. Irene, if you want to go on that. One success story. Yeah.
Success story.
If you don't have any, okay, that's
so many.
Oh, okay.
So let me start with not my personal success story. I think a success story for AI is to improve diagnosis of cancer, for example, skin cancer. So on the basis of images, I think this is really a success story. So many of those diagnostic tools are really better than any experienced doctor. So that improves, healthcare. That shows that there's a need to.
Do you think of a specific example of the data for BBMRI, for instance, like a nice?
I said no. I would. Okay. And and I think we have now really invested much money in infrastructures across the European Union, and there are really valuable databases. We just need to make them accessible. But
okay, so Leo, I know that you have success stories also.
Yeah, no, our success story is primarily building ecosystems in different parts of the world, creating that culture of learning, creating that team science approach to data science. So we have a rich global outreach where we connect within countries, universities, industry, and the computer science community, as well as the clinicians. And we get so excited about the excitement on the ground, and they become champions of data sharing. So I think that's our biggest success story to date.
Thank you, Hervé.
Yeah, so maybe I can mention, so the success story are related to AI algorithms that have been trained, for instance, for the detection of focal lesions in the liver from ultrasound images, where we showed that we were doing, let's say, comparable to the mixture, I think, of 5 to 7 professionals for the detection, as I said, of focal lesions. We also showed with a comparison of 7 radiologists and health professionals that we were able to segment the prostate, the whole gland, and the peripheral and different sectors and zones of the liver, as well as the health professionals. And also we worked with Siemens Healthcare in the US and Johns Hopkins for the patient selections for the implantation of ICDs. To avoid implanting ICDs to persons that do not benefit from them, and we were able to use AI to actually better select the patients compared to the baseline.
Thank you. André, do you have a success story at a European level, maybe?
For me, the one success story which I'd like to remind us was during the COVID. You remember we have very rare side effects of vaccines for the colds, and this was really interesting. You know how European Medicine Agency, together with the Eden projects and access to big data, was able to come first with the detection of this problem, but then with the risk assessments. I found this quite good story. It was relatively quick done with relatively, I think, good results, which also helped inform the whole world.
Thank you. So we are approaching to the end of this because I want to leave time for questions, but there is one last point I wanted to address. Irene, you mentioned it, I think it's you at the beginning. We talked about sharing in Europe. We talked about sharing in the US. You tackled sharing between US and Europe, but we all know that it's a worldwide problem and we have to deal it worldwide. So it's great because we're building some bricks in Europe. There are some bricks in the US and so on, but we have to work together. And what is the place of China? What is the place of Africa? So who wants to start on this? Maybe André, you can start on that.
You know, I can say what we propose in the regulation. So we have article which basically relate to this issue, and the concept there is that the data access to secondary health data should be under the same conditions as required to the EU researchers and innovators, but the same procedures should be applied, and also it should be done in the secure environment. This is something Iran also spoke earlier. Is going to survive this way during negotiations. We should see next few months, but of course, it's a concept which is generally in the Data Governance Act, which is the other important governance act in the EU.
Who wants to comment on that? Yeah.
No, I just wanted to mention, for example, that there is a large initiative in Africa called DSI Africa. And the objective of that initiative is to create health data hubs, including data sets, as well as initiatives to build capacity in health data science in all of Africa. And then there is also the Make Health LATAM initiative that we are a part of. And this is bringing together the different Latin American countries who have the same mission and vision of focusing on data and learning at the front and center of healthcare. So this is participated on by Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, and every so often we would hold datathons. So datathons is an event that we organize every month, and it's a great opportunity to bring together, interface the healthcare practitioners with the machine learning community, bring in the government, bring in industry, and bring in academia. And of course, don't forget the underrepresented colleagues that we have who should also be part of this large community.
Thank you. Some other?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm the lawyer. I point to the problems. Excuse me for that. I'm a little bit concerned that we might end up in a discussion if we exploit, African data for the more advanced industrialized countries would use the data there. And yeah, that it's just a concern. I think we have to be aware that this might happen, that this will be a discussion. So we should be prepared to have an appropriate an appropriate answer to this, because equal access is not equal opportunities normally. It depends on your resources. But of course, then I think we should exchange our knowledge globally. That's every scientist, every researcher, I think, would support that idea that research is always global, and the best brains are spread all over the world, and we need to collaborate.
Okay, so just before taking the questions, 1 minute each I'm sorry for the 1 minute each thing, but we're time to close the session. In 10 years, how do you see data access and data sharing in 2032? Who wants to start?
I may sound pessimistic, but I'm actually optimistic that we're actually gonna move the needle, that there's enough critical mass, there's enough interest, there's enough understanding that bias exists in the data. And as a community, as a society, we're gonna have to address it. So I credit AI for bringing in front of us a mirror, and that mirror is the data, and that data is a reflection of us as a society, and we could no longer go around it. We are here to fix all the problems that we're seeing now, and I think AI is allowing us to do that. So I'm very optimistic that there will be more data sharing in 10 years.
So who is optimistic? Who is pessimistic?
Okay. I think also that so we can expect, we are still, let's say, testing the better ways to share data while enforcing privacy. In 10 years from now, we can expect that we will have learned the better ways, and we have cited several of them using the data warehouses at the local, national, or European levels, and using pooled or federated learning, and so on. And so we will have learned the best and most efficient way. Also, efficacy is important. The resources are also limited, and we need to do what is most efficient and most secure. And maybe if I want to dream a little bit, we could, I think in France, we have this national platform for electronic medical record, like called Mon Espace Santé. And so we could leverage probably on this to improve information, to empower basically the French citizen, that they can be part of a clinical research and share their data, and use this type of platform to improve the patient consent, and also empower them to provide their own data if they want to contribute. It's maybe more wishful thinking, but...
Irene? So the lawyer is optimistic or pessimistic?
So I have hopes, I have dreams. And I would really like to see that we shift a little bit our focus from the legal perspective, from protecting data to protecting people. I think we need to better protect against discriminatory effects, for example. So based on biased data sets, we come to biased results, and we might exclude people from certain services on the basis of such results, and we need to have an answer to this. So I think there's the important thing is not so much how to prevent people from sharing data. The importance is how do we make sure that people are still treated in a fair way, and not discriminated, not excluded from certain benefits and activities in society.
Thank you. André, it's your turn. But just before, I would like to just say, maybe not how I envision, but what my dream is, and it is directly linked to maybe what you are going to say. That's why I allow myself to say it. I just wish the regulation drafts European Commission wrote and published will be adopted as is. That's my dream. But go ahead, André.
By the way, as a co-legislator, I should say, we hope this will be enriched by the wisdom of European Council or 27 member states discussing and getting together into agreements. But also European Parliament. But I think it's also important that we'll be able to build in next year's infrastructure and knowledge base, allowing us, working under this common regulatory framework, we'll be able to agree in coming, hopefully, months or year. Second, I think it's important. What my dream is that we will have more harmonization in the system, agreement also about, for example, about the standardization of the medical health records, using of different nomenclatures like SNOMED or others. And thirdly, we will be able to build, this data culture, which I think is so important to really go from the medical school to the patients organization, hospital managers, researchers, when data become, not only, something which exists, but simply is used and giving us, the Miro. I like this concept of Miro. We can see ourselves also in this Miro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I got a message saying that we do have time because we're a little late, so that's good. So we have time for, there are a few questions on the chat, but maybe we should start with questions in the audience. Are there any? So we don't have to put a microphone in front of you, you just push the button and speak.
Does it work? Yeah. Matthew Komorowski from Imperial College, London. I wonder if there's a gap between our level of fear and concern and what patients actually think. So we haven't listened, we haven't heard any patients expressing their opinion about, their concerns about privacy on their own data. Last year, I ran a survey online. It's quick, but I ran a survey online in sepsis survivors groups on Facebook. And among the survey, I asked one question, which is, I'm concerned that academic scientists working for university use my medical data for research purposes. And then they could answer on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not concerned at all, and 10 being extremely concerned. And the median, so I had 109 responses. The median score was 3, so not very concerned. Second question is, I'm concerned that healthcare or tech companies use my medical data for product development. And here the answer was 5. So again, it's not 10, right? It's 5. So I wonder if we should include patients and members of the public more in those discussions, because I think their point of view is super important. And that's something we try to do in my own research. In the research grants now, we do PPI activities in the UK a lot, involving members of the public in having direct input into the research. I think that's crucial.
So who wants to comment on that? Okay, yeah.
Just speaking for BBMI, we have a stakeholder forum and we collaborate with patient organizations every day. So that's normal work. So patients' voice is heard, but I have to say that, it's not the public. It depends a little bit on what you're suffering from. So a rare disease patient would always tell you, please use my data for research purposes, but other people who have no serious condition would not be as open as that. So I think it's a bit dangerous to put it into those two questions, to be honest. And and it's a typical thing that people are more concerned about the data use via industry than academia. But if you explain to them that the best academic research is worth nothing without having a pharmaceutical company to develop a drug out of it, then they change their mind immediately. So I think it's that those surveys. I love surveys, but we need to see it a little bit differently. So it's a bit more complex than that. But I totally agree with you, and that was my pledge from the beginning. We need to take citizens and patients seriously, and we need this constant dialogue, of course.
Maybe I can address very shortly. A number of studies we have done, that we really see the very large citizens answering positive to these questions. But I agree with you, Ren, that is very much also when you go deeper to the questions, we most probably can more complex answers. But generally, there is very positive approach in this moment, at least to this. But we should continue to explain things. I don't think we should leave patient organizations, citizens without continue explaining why those data make sense for them, for citizens, for our work.
Thank you. So we have time for some of the questions. Yes, please, there.
Hello, Emilie Arnaud from an emergency physician from the Amiens University Hospital. Thank you for this great presentation and taking my question. We did not speak about the data producer motivations. I believe the MIMIC dataset and the impact it had on other scientists. The data producers are often the physicians and their team. And how did you manage the physicians' fear to lose the monopoly of the data? And how do you encourage them to continue to produce qualitative data and let others work on their data without being associated? So the biggest challenge that we face in trying to convince people to share the data turns out to be politics and egos. And you need to do some massaging of the egos. We have to work as data ambassadors and to convince them that they will benefit from them sharing the data. They will be cited every time that data is being used, similar to MIMIC. But it's still a hard sell. I think we need to make some changes in the academic environment where competition is much, much more emphasized rather than collaboration. We always say we're collaborating, but that's collaborating in appearance only. Everything is still being done in silos. Everyone is still competing for the same funding, but that's changing. For example, the NIH now is strongly focusing on funding projects that would allow top-tiered research institutions to partner with minority-serving institutions. So that's the AIM Ahead project. So we're seeing a lot of bold strokes from the NIH, and we're really applauding them. The other one is the Bridge to AI initiative, and they just re-announced their mandate that data sharing will be a part of NIH-funded projects. If you're not able to give details about how you're going to share and manage your data, then do not even think of applying for taxpayers' money, because they will start mandating, they will start policing about data sharing. And we're hoping that other countries would follow this bold stroke of the NIH.
Okay, go, Irene. No, I'm sad that we have 5 minutes left.
Just shortly to add, incentives of healthcare professionals for quality data is key in my view. And this is an important aspect. So it's not only about researchers applying for funding. It's if you want to get access to hospital data, healthcare data, real world data, how can you make sure that this is somehow quality data? I think we need to discuss it a little bit deeper, because it's work to provide quality data, and in daily care to add additional obligations and workload, it's questionable.
Yeah, we need to discuss deeper on a lot of matters. So maybe time for 2 more questions. So one from the chat, and then I'll take one from the room again. So it's a technical question. Could blockchain technology help connecting different health data spaces, bringing standardization and also ensuring privacy?
Full disclosure, not a big fan. I think that using blockchain technology will disadvantage the more technically less savvy people, because there's all this movement in saying that the data should be at the hands of the patients, and they will be the ones who will determine which data of theirs will be shared. I think that will create a lot of bias in the data. So very few people understand the benefit of data sharing. It's the same thing as informed consent. We think that informed consent is to protect the patient, but the ability to understand informed consent is itself a privilege. A lot of people do not understand the concept of informed consent, and these are the people who are very mistrustful of the government and researchers, and they are the ones who will be excluded from all the innovations of AI because they're not going to share their data. So I don't think technology is going to solve the problem that we have now. People are always saying that, oh, we're going to fix everything with technology and AI. Healthcare is such a social construct that technology is probably not going to be the ultimate solution. We need to fix society to be able to fix healthcare.
Thank you. So last question. Yes, please.
Michel Dumontier, Maastricht University. So this question is mostly for Leo. You cited this mimic, the tremendous need for open data for healthcare. And yet, I don't see so many other departments coming together and providing data to others. I would have expected, since you've been doing it for so long, that we would see a plurality of such data sets. Can you maybe share some insight as to what is preventing groups from publishing data like MEMIC?
So you need investment, you need people, you need expertise, you need technical infrastructure to be able to create something similar to MEMIC. The good news is there are other organizations who we have partnered with. So there's the Amsterdam University Medical Center who released their own ICU database. There's Incel Spital in Bern, Switzerland, who did the same. We're working with health systems in Brazil, in Australia, and then Uganda, Ghana, and Kenya. So it's a little bit delayed, but as I said, overall, I'm optimistic. There are more and more people who are seeing the benefit of data sharing. And I think mandates from funding organizations such as the NIH is going to push this forward much faster than we could.